the outside or the west side or whatever. And where do they park? You haven't made any adjustment for parking. But would you make that same adjustment if you did it for Geno Surf? Would you say, Mr. Geno Surf, you're going to need parking if you want to put this pavilion up? So please, don't just pass this as, oh, well, you know, I hate to ascribe motives to people, but I'll tell you what, sometimes when you look at it, it looks to me like the motive was, well, if I put it up and then I put something else afterwards, they'll just go ahead and approve it. That's what it looks like to me. And it's up to you to say, no, we won't approve it. Take it down and come in and apply for it. Not leave it up and then come in and apply for it. Take it down. It don't belong there. And now if you want it, apply for it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senstar.
Hello, my name is Bonnie Wagner. I live at 31633 South River Road. It is our family residence. We run it as it is our backyard. We put up a pavilion. I've been married to Brian for 34 years. The man cannot be idle. He started working on it in the spring, knowing that we had 5 open boat wells. We eliminated and rented out 4, and we have 1 that's still empty. We make a living in Harrison Township. It's our only means of income. It is our residence. My husband has made me and our children promise that in his demise, whether it comes now or 30 years from now, hold on to my piece of property. We are invested in there. If you've seen what it looked like when we bought it, it was a total mess, a rundown, crappy house, property, overgrown. It was awful. She talks about us having come before you to put up fences and gates. We had to fight because they wanted the sign in the middle of the parking lot. They wanted no fencing, yet our neighbor had barbed wire on the top of his fencing to keep people out. We weren't asking for anything more than to make our piece of property a generated income. We're not a bar. We have no liquor license. We have no desire to try to bring liquor into our establishment. We're not Geno Surf. Again, we have 17 boat wells. Him and I live there. We rent out 1 unit to a woman that has been there a year and re-signed up. We have storage that isn't utilized in the summer, so there is parking. You're asking about parking for maybe 10 extra cars. It's there. It's in our gravel lot that's for storage behind our paved parking lot. We have put thousands and thousands of dollars into this. He did get approval to put up his pavilion. He gets carried away. Them doors cost us $3,000 and $4,000 for each one. But when you look out there, you can see right through to the river. We didn't do it cheaply. He has always thought of, like he said, he came clean. He didn't even wait to get a notice that said, stop this work. Again, like he says, we're out in the open. There's nothing across the street. The river is in front of us. When those winds come through, we tried it. Half of the pavilion gets blown from one side or the other, and people have to squeeze in to one 6-foot area in the middle. It's not huge. We're not going to be, renting it out, making a fortune. I have grandchildren. I'd like to have their birthday parties there. Again, it's a family place. Like Brian said, him and I don't even drink liquor. He don't even let the boaters put beers in our refrigerator. When you leave, you take your alcohol with you, and very few of them even drink. We bring out a coffee pot and we make coffee. One lady wants to have bingo in there for the boaters that stay on the weekend. I mean, seriously, it's not a Gino Surf. It's not a tiki bar. Yes, like I say, he gets carried away. I didn't want to see him spend that money for them doors, but it's gorgeous. I'm the one that watches the pennies, and it has to pay for keeping boaters there. We did get some new boaters this year. Again, a man had cancer. We gave him his deposit back. That's why our first biggest well is sitting empty. But we have to make a living. And again, with the parking lot, I remember coming to this meeting, they wanted islands and trees in our parking lot. How do you move around boats with islands and trees? We're not a public business besides catering to the boaters that come there. I do have an 81-year-old mother, but if she has a birthday party, it's going to be friends and relatives. It ain't going to be outsiders. It's just, like I say, we live there. It is our backyard. He told you, we asked one family to leave because they didn't mix in. They were partiers. They came back. Even though they didn't party at our property, they came back, they hit our seawall. It's beautiful. We put in new seawall. We put in new walkways. We put in new grass, and the voles are eating it. Like he said, if we have an open pavilion, animals are going to take up residence in there. They come across the street when they put in the bike path. Brand new sod, and the voles ate it over the winter. We're trying to work in keeping this piece of property nice. And I would just ask you to realize that, you know, it's not a bar. We're not looking to have liquor. It's really for our boaters and for my family. I live there. And at the time that, you know, we've tried to make improvements, and we have just had a hard time. The economy went down, and Brian doesn't have his other job. Again, this is the only way that we survive and make a living. And we're not old enough for Social Security. So we do have to try to keep boaters there. Look at Markley. Markley's emptying out left and right. There's empty wells. We're boat town. You know, people come from, like he said, all around to spend time at our facility. The price of gas, none of them take their boats out. But they use the gas station down the road, they use the party stores. And you know that corner at 16? I'd love to see a business there. I'd love to see a Starbucks. You know, I didn't address that issue, but our township doesn't have a whole lot of places for people to go because we can't draw anyone from the water unless they're people that have boats in the township. You know, Canada's one of our closer neighbors, you know. So I would just ask you to consider letting us keep it. Like I say, I was against a lot of the work he did only because it costs money. And you get into a bind if you spend money and then you tell your boaters that are there that you see that you put indoors, go, oh, guess what? We can't keep the doors. We're out that money and you can't use it when it rains. We need to have it to where we can use it when it rains. So I just ask you that it, you know, be approved, that we can keep it. And it is beautiful. If you want to take a ride out there and look at it, he did get a permission to put it up. It just, he's not one to sit idle. He's always doing improvements. And like I say, he's told our kids, don't sell my place, keep it. We're very attached to it. Thank you for listening.
If I could just take a second to address a comment that was made. I can tell you every time I've sat on this board, whether in this position or just as a board member, every decision we make is based on the information in this book. Those are our rules and regulations. Those are the laws that we follow. We don't say yes because we like somebody, and we don't say no because we don't like somebody. We don't say yes because we think it's a really cool project, and we don't say no because we don't like it or because our friend doesn't like it. Every decision we make is based on the information in this book, and this is our Bible. So the comments that I made, you'll remember back then, and you'll remember now. I mean, it's.
When we bought
But
the
it's not,
property,
but it's, excuse me, but it's not up to us to enforce the ordinance. That falls under a different position. Our decision this evening is whether or not to approve it as enclosed only. And we will allow, if we decide to approve that, conditional based on the other items being taken care of through Mr. Axel's office. So I just want to make it known that this is how we make our decisions.
I understand.
Rules and
I'd like
regulations.
to address that when we bought the property, it was already set up as two-family house, and part of our issue was that they said, no, it wasn't a two-family house. And we did go through and have to get a variance. But it was being presented when we bought it on the market that it was a two-family house.
I do remember that.
So
I do
some of the issue
So,
wasn't our fault.
Let's stick to what we're
Okay,
talking about
but
today.
I'm just
So-
saying, so the past issues weren't all our fault. It was presented as a two-family house when we bought it. And again, we have to make money there or we can't survive.
Our job today is to determine, I'm sorry, Mr.
No, I
O'Day.
apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to make a comment that I have total confidence the building department will follow through and make sure that everything's done the way it should be done. My only issue is, and I think the work that you guys did over there is wonderful. My only issue is the way that it proceeded. That's the big problem. I just see nothing but issues down the road when other people come in front of us and ask for permission to do projects in the community. It sounds to me from, you've had issues with the board well before I was involved in it, where they wanted you to do more than you were able to do from a financial standpoint. So to me, that's just saying that, okay, we've had problems before in the past, let's just go ahead and put it up and see what we can get away with and see what they can approve for us, and then we'll slide it through that way. It's just,
And that may not have been,
Maybe not.
the situation. But the problem is that it opens the door to that mentality in the future. And that is something, well,
Madam Chair,
thank you, Mr. Maher.
I certainly appreciate the concerns, and I also appreciate the fact that it would be disturbing to you that it was done without permits and so forth, and it really falls into an enforcement category. Our job tonight is to determine whether or not this building is going to meet the ordinance
Right.
requirements, and whether or not, number one, you want to allow it as a technical change. Number two, if you agree with Mr. McDougal and feel it needs special land use. And number three, if it doesn't require special land use, if you're gonna require it to come back for full site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. Okay, we are in the middle of a motion to approve the enclosed pavilion as recommended by the technical committee. Motion by Mr. Tominello, seconded by Mr. Batcha. Roll call, if there's no more discussion or continued discussion on the motion?
I don't know if Mr. McDougal has.
Mr. McDougal?
I was suggesting that a possible amendment to the motion that would involve some limitations on rental of this at any time in the future. I'm not so concerned about Mr. Wagner and his use of it as long as he's there, and hopefully his family at some time in the future. But I am concerned about the next guy who buys it and says, oh, this is a great place, and it's a place, and boy, we can have some parties there, and we can rent that out for weddings and retirement parties and big birthday bashes and all the rest of that kind of thing. And I was suggesting that we might want to, with the guidance of council, formulate some limitations on the use of the property as to what exactly limitations we could put in place. And I was just mentioning that to Mr. Tominello, and I'll leave it to Mr. Tominello from there.
So I don't have a problem with doing that. I guess the only thing that, in my mind, I'm thinking, if we wanted to do that, we probably should have done that back in 2012. Making it an enclosed does not change the use that it was intended for. So just because it has garage doors on it, does that really, is it really fair? Does it really make sense to say you can't use this now? And we want to restrict you because you have sides. You don't have to have sides to do that enforcement, and we should have done that when we approved if that, we felt strongly about that. It should have been part of the motion when we approved this back in 2012. That's just my thought. And that's why I'm really not, although I'll entertain the thought, but I don't think it's necessary.
I'll just comment to Larry's, I concur with your observation,
Madam Chairman,
Well,
what you just said.
I don't know how you have a reasonable relationship to that. It was a pavilion, you could have had lots of people get married outdoors under a pavilion. I don't think there's any restriction, it doesn't relate to the property, it's there, you approved it, it's their property. You can't restrict their business use or their family from coming over to, I don't understand, there's no reasonable relation to that condition.
But I
to
think
the use
Mr.
of a pavilion.
I think Mr. McDougal's concern, though, is that it be rented to the general public, people outside of the marina rental.
But then you'd have to relate it to a use on the property, that the fact that it would it's as it relates to parking.
Well, and I think that's the valid point right there, is there's very limited parking on the site. If you start renting this to the general public, you've really created something that otherwise doesn't exist at this
Well,
point.
the,
And I do
the use
believe that
changes.
if that were the case,
Sure.
you would get complaints that you'd have an overflow of parking onto the street.
And then it becomes
And
an
then it would
ordinance
be an
issue once
enforcement
again.
issue.
I guess that's where my head was going. I mean, I understood your point, Doug, the way I was reading it to this point here, there's other ordinances that would prevent any person who has an accessory structure from trying to rent it. If it's being used in a repetitive manner as a rental, that can be prevented. Neighbors will call saying that every weekend, neighbor X is renting out their garage, pick whatever the accessory structure is. So I believe to the concern, I think it's already protected already without us having to put the restriction as part of the motion, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I'll make the distinction because it comes straight to roost personally at a wedding I went to last weekend, okay? The wedding was held in a nice outdoor gazebo at a facility. And if you'll remember last Saturday afternoon, it was a little bit dicey in the weather department. And I know the father of the bride rather well, and he shared with me, he said, the only reason I allowed my daughter to have a wedding in this outdoor gazebo was because they had a facility to move it inside in this rain. I think there's a difference with an enclosed facility, which this is enclosed, and an open gazebo when we start talking about commercial use, renting it out. And again, I'm not talking about Mr. Wagner in the next 10, 15, 20 years. I'm talking about somebody he sells it to and another person who comes into our township. And with that, I'll let that point ride for the balance of the planning commission to make a decision. I think I made my point. I think it's a valid point. I think the parking issue, if it ever gets commercial use, all you're doing is creating an enforcement problem. And that's fine, it becomes an enforcement problem. And I understand, it becomes an enforcement problem, you enforce.
I guess you
But,
could, hold the wedding in the garage too, and then be cited for overflow parking.
Well,
Yeah, I'm just,
Yeah.
because it's, it was.
would you have your daughter's wedding in the garage,
No, but it's an
counsel?
enclosed structure, so on this parcel.
Okay,
Is there a bathroom in the facility?
No.
Can there be a bathroom put into the facility?
As, even with what he has done without proper permitting and inspection, no.
Can we prevent a bathroom from ever being installed?
No.
Excuse me. I thought I was going somewhere where that really limits it. These people may go back to their boats and go to the bathroom. Well, so that would take the out of the non-boat renters. I was just looking for some peace of mind there.
There's other facilities on the site.
Exactly.
As well, so I
What you
mean-
meant, if he's going, if you, as the board, approve this evening, and he's going to come to myself and Mr. Maples, and we're going to sit down and have this conversation, and he's going to go through and do everything that he should have done to begin with, And as I said, I do not condone that. I don't appreciate that it was done. I don't care to see that happening in Harrison Township. That's not how we want to operate. But it's done, and we're here to try to rectify this. That being said, if he wanted to put a bathroom in that facility, he would have to come back to us and apply for proper permitting and tie the sanitary sewer in, or to have a lead put on the sanitary main, which in turn costs more money. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible for him to put a restroom in the facility.
Is there any way, this might sound kind of odd, to prevent use of the pavilion until everything is brought up to code? Kind of as a penalty for doing it without the proper documents.
Okay,
ahead of
let me
time.
say this. That's not to say that when Mr. Wagner comes in to speak with Mr. Maples and I, that we do not fine him. We can fine him for doing this without permits and inspections, and this is gonna depend a lot on the gentleman's character, how he presents himself, what has been done, what we find needs to be done. There are a lot of variables here, going from an open structure to a closed structure. So there's a lot of conversation to be had before I feel completely comfortable speaking as to how monetarily, permit, inspection, how I'm going to deal with this. There's, a lot that's going to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
You know, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Not to belabor the point, but, I think Mr. Folk is bringing up a point of, the bathroom being there and that having a significant impact on the potential use. There's no reason you can't put a condition on the approval that says you shall not put a bathroom in at any point in time. And if you feel that's gonna change the function or the capacity or the type of use that could exist, it's certainly a reasonable condition to apply. So, that's something you could entertain.
Thank you, Mr. Marr.
Mr. McDougal, does that change, or does that give you some difference of thought? If you
Certainly
would-
a limitation that has merit.
Yeah, for outside use.
Yeah, and that takes away to some extent. I'm not familiar enough with the rest of the property, having not seen any detailed plan of it.
We do have an enclosed structure a couple doors down on the east side of Sundog, Mr. Bowen's marina, I forget the name
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
He does have an enclosed pavilion, he does have bathrooms in there. Has it changed the character of the site? Does it change public coming in? It's not as large as this naturally, but
Yeah.
it is there.
You'll say that enclosure is big enough for about 3 people.
Maybe 6. And a picnic table.
I get all the conversation. I just find it as we're reaching, in
Yeah.
my opinion. I think the engineering director, if the applicant wants to put a bathroom in 2 years, let him deal with that issue, and if it becomes a big issue, maybe it's in front of us, maybe it's not. I don't know how we can speculate on what someone's gonna do in the
Can't.
future. It
We
just,
can't.
I don't think we need to go there.
Okay, so, any more discussion on the motion? If not, I'm gonna restate the motion. Motion to approve Riverbend Marina, case number 1414, TCR, to approve the enclosed pavilion as recommended by the technical committee, subject to the applicant securing all needed permits and inspections with the building and water and sewer departments. Is that it in its entirety? Motion by Mr. Tominello, seconded by Mr. Batcha. Roll call, please, Mr. Tominello.
Do we need a roll call on that?
Well, we
Madam
don't. No, we don't. All those in favor?
Chair?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you very much, Planning Commission and township officials. Thank you.
All right. Our last case for this evening, Mr. Tominello.
This would be under comments from the planner, item 3, case 1614 TCR Joe Harrell, 39555 Jefferson, Harrison Township, install a fence and gate across a driveway.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion to approve case number 16-14- TCR Joe Harrell, 39,555 Jefferson, for the installation of a fence and gate across the driveway as recommended by the technical committee.
I have a motion to approve the install of the fence and the gate across the drive. Do I have a second?
Support?
Mr. Besha? Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Harrell. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Were you getting scared?
Okay, comments from the floor?
Madam Chair, I wonder if there can be a couple more comments from the planner.
Sure,
I
that'd
just
be
feel
great.
like I haven't said enough tonight.
That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Maher.
That was just humor, Mr. Folk. Okay.
Yeah, should I start my timer?
Yeah. You know, just so the commission's aware, we were also approached at the tech team by Gloucester on the Clinton, which is the name of the place to the east of Sundog. And they were proposing, was it enclosed or an unenclosed pavilion. The area that they were proposing it, there was not enough room to meet the setbacks from the water. At this point in time, he's making a decision whether or not he wants to proceed with this, because there's actually no other space on the site that he could possibly put that. So, nonetheless, I'm just
So
letting you
this
know
is
that.
fair warning? Is that
I
you letting
wouldn't
us
call
know that
it
it's
warning,
coming
it's
out?
just more or less informational that he did show up at the tech team with that. We couldn't process it because it doesn't meet the ordinance.
If he does come back in, Mr. Meyer, I'd recommend that he come for a site plan. He's in violation of our approval of the prior site plan for that property. He has been since he opened the facility.
That discussion took place, and nonetheless, that's, might be one of the reasons he hasn't made that decision yet of proceeding.
Okay.
I won't speak for him.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Appreciate that.
You know, the last item is, I've handed out some of the replacement pages for the zoning ordinance tonight, as we discussed at the previous workshop. Also, there is one section that we were going to clarify some graphics on the setbacks, and what was the section name again? What was it? Yeah, anyway, it's the blue section, I think, yards, lots, and, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even hand it out tonight. That's-
Yeah, I don't
what-
have a copy.
What ended up happening was, we were having some graphic issues. After changing it, I somehow deleted some of my boxes and didn't notice it till it printed out. I will get those to you as soon as I replace those boxes. And, but what I would like tonight is, since we have no additional, what I would call material changes to the ordinance that were discussed outside of what we have already discussed, if the commission is comfortable that we at least start the process moving by setting the public hearing tonight, and then at least we can start moving forward. Obviously, we can make hundreds of changes during the public hearing process, but at least it gets us on the right track of getting this adopted.
So really, you're looking for us to set a date for the public hearing, and could we do that as soon as our September? Or did you want to go one more month out?
I think the September meeting would be fine if you're comfortable with it. We need just 15 days' notice.
September 18th is our next meeting. Discussion? Are you guys good with that? Okay.
Just know we've been suffering for the last 10 years with the verbiage of the current ordinance, and it sure would be nice to start this thing on the right path.
Do we have to make a motion to set the public hearing,
I
or
think
can
a
we just set
motion
that?
would be appropriate.
Okay.
Motion to set a public hearing for the zoning ordinance.
Okay. I'll make that motion to set the public hearing for the review of our new Harrison Township zoning ordinance to the public, September 18th, 2014, our next PC meeting. May I have a second? Mr. Olgiati? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So,
And that is all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any additional comments from the floor? Mr. Bardell?
William Bardell. I just want to make a comment on case number 1. And I know everybody agrees with, I know we're going to take a timeout or a 30-day breather or whatever and get back with it, but it's always, this situation here, and I know everyone agrees with that, we all find it very interesting why this wasn't a conditional rezoning.
Madam Chair, you know, because this case was a public hearing and because we've had a public hearing, I think it could cause problems for potential litigation, taking any comments or any
Okay.
type of input.
I'll withdraw
Outside of
that.
the public hearing?
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it could hurt
I'll
either
withdraw
side,
that.
depending
Okay.
on what the
I'll
decision.
Thank you,
withdraw
Mr.
that.
Maher.
I'll withdraw that.
Okay.
I will say this, I will say this, on all these situations, all these, proposals, if need be, let's take, for instance, this last situation with the gazebo. And it was been talked about when we did start having the tech committee. And I take my hat off to Mr. Ortega, why there wasn't a
Olgiati.
stop order.
Mr. Olgiati?
Mr. Olgiati, I take my hat off to you for your comment on why there wasn't a stop order. And if we need to give a slap on the wrist to the tech committee, I think they get a slap on the wrist for that. And thank you for looking out.
It wasn't really a slap on the wrist I was looking for, just a
Procedural.
proper order, that's all.
It's all about procedure. I'm with you 100%. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bardell.
Sorry, if I may address that last comment, as far as slap on the wrist or not, it's putting a stop work order, if we are not called out there, we can't patrol every single street, every single address in Harrison Township to know what is happening. Had we seen that this was being enclosed, any one of either my water and sewer personnel, a building personnel, or even the assessing when they're out, if there's something going on, numerous times I have gone back into that township with an address written on a piece of paper and gone to the computer to check to see if there's permits pulled. So had we had any inkling that this was happening, I promise you, it would have been addressed.
I never had an issue with that, Mr. Jackson. I just was wondering what was done up until that point. I know it kind of was almost one of those situations where the new regime had kind of taken over, and I just wasn't sure if you guys were even aware of what was going on. I didn't know what was going on over there myself, and
That's exactly the case, and yes, he, as I said, and I don't want to drag this out, what he did was not correct. He knows it wasn't correct, yet he was taking pictures and, you know, in case, it was almost as in case he got caught. Well, he came into us, and now it will be addressed and addressed properly, I promise you.
sure will be.
Thank you, Mr. Axel.
Madam Chair, I have just a follow-up comment to that, because what Mr. Olgiati said, and Mr. Axtell, even if people were driving by there regularly, and I think on South River Road, they probably were from the township, the screening out there, and I went out and look hard at the property. And the screening of the arborvitaes, et cetera, out there is very good. Let's leave it at that, to say, you know, it could easily have been missed.
Mr. Senstock?
Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. I wasn't intending on standing up, but this board on the item number 1 indicated that you were going to put it on, table it, and you were going to take additional input, talk among yourselves and other items of such things, and to say and not let a resident get up and speak on that was not proper. I don't care what Mr. Mahar's opinion is. You guys said it publicly, that you were going to consider additional input, you were going to do this. I listened to the whole thing. So I'll let him do his own fighting, but I think you were improper in shutting him down. Secondly, I spoke against or up about the Wagner property. Personally, I wanted to see it go through. He's got a beautiful
He
operation
does.
there.
He does.
But I don't want to encourage people to do that kind of thing. And so I wanted to make it a little harder. I knew you guys are going to approve it, but, you know, there's got to be some reason that these people decide to follow the ordinance, because if it's always, well, I'll go ahead and ask for forgiveness later and get it, that's what's going to happen. So I'm not dissatisfied with the answer you guys gave him. I was hoping you would do that, but, you know, he's got to realize he can't do that kind of stuff, because he's going to have some other stuff.
Everyone has to
Yeah,
realize.
yeah.
I mean, that's why there are
There needs
rules.
to be something brought forward in the future to prevent this. There, you know,
Yeah.
so it's out front instead of after the fact. As a comment was made in our office, we don't want this becoming Detroit where you just go do it and it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. And that's
Right.
exactly what happens there.
So with that, I'll shut up.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yes, Mr. McDougal.
Just a suggestion. Is it possible with every approval that goes out from the planning commission and when permits are issued, for the building department possibly to put together some sort of a notice to the person who's getting the permit for the original structure? You got a permit for the pavilion, right? That says, you were approved at the planning commission for exactly this project and you may not change it without going for further approvals?
There is, on most of the permits, I would have to read every one, but there is language stating such, just as there are on my water and sewer.
And it's probably buried in the middle of some language that a lot of people don't read thoroughly. You know, only lawyers read things thoroughly, counsel. In the public, I think that, I'm talking about a cover thing.
I
Cover sheet
understand,
that
and as
says
I
it.
said, I think that's something that we need to look at for the future. I
Good.
will state that, yes, buried in the middle, but I can tell you on demolition for water and sewer, it's the #1 item, and they still don't read it. They still go out and tear the house down
Yeah.
before they come to
Yeah.
us for the cap off.
Yeah,
So
I hear you.
sometimes it's just a difficult task that we have to address.
It just gives you one more arrow in your quiver when a situation like this arises.
Agree.
Mr. Ardell.
I'd like to make one comment on, I won't say what case it was, but it was talking about sub pumps, certain things of that nature. Nowadays, they got sub pumps for your basement or for your crawl space that run on, #1, electricity. You can have a battery backup. You can also have water. They got a new one that runs on city water pressure. When the power cuts off, city water pressure comes on, there's a little alarm, comes off. So as far as any, you know, if a builder wants to come in and say, well, the water level's too high, too low, PERT test, this, that, there's always ways to build single-family houses, either on a slab, basement, no basement, different types of sub pumps, new technology, it's 100 years old, but now they're finally bringing it out. I just want to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any additional comments from the floor, from the board?
Yes, Madam Chair, I had one thing I mentioned to you at the beginning of
Yes.
the meeting. I find myself somewhat frustrated, and I'll address the comments to the commission and to everyone else who supports this, and it's not meant to be nasty or mean or critical, but I'm getting very frustrated with receiving emails of pertinent, important data for a meeting, and I don't see the data until I get home when I'm gone, and it's been mailed out at 10, 11, 12 o'clock on the day of the meeting. And I get home at 5:30 and have to be here for a meeting at 7 o'clock. And I have that, and I'm referring specifically in this meeting, that was the first time I saw the tech team's letters. And, you know, that led to a little bit of scrambling of research for me. And it's been, it's more consistent, that it seems like we're getting
Lately.
things late. And I'd just like to make a very friendly request that we receive things a little more timely for meetings from all of our support people. When there's letters of approval or analysis or whatever that we should be looking at. I don't think it's fair to ask us to receive something at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when the meeting's at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Anything else?
That's it.
You know, I just have a little bit to add on to that. As far as planner and engineer comments, those are no longer in our packets, are those all coming by email?
If I receive them on time to put them in your packet for you.
Okay, so can I request also, so if they don't go in the packets, can we have a copy here at the table?
Yes.
Okay. We used to do it that way, and I think, you know, a lot of us don't have access to email before we come to the meeting. So like tonight, I didn't have them, because I didn't print them before I came, because I didn't have time. But if they were here, I think we used to do that in the past.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments? Our next meeting is September 18th, 2014. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Bradshaw, Mr. McDougal, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.